and welcome back, listeners. This is the orientation video for Long Walk Talks Lost. I'm Chief Engineer David Hensley, owner and creative director of Long Walk Productions, and I'm joined tonight by my head researcher,
Cara Hayes,
and our staff quantum physicist,
Robert Bradford.
And we are picking up where we left off on our Lost 20-year retrospective, now in Season 5. We took a break for the holidays, so I hope all of our listeners had a very Merry Christmas or whatever you celebrate, and a Happy New Year.
Happy Constant Day.
There's that, yes. So we are going to be picking up with episode 512, but first, we had a themed drink. Robert, tell the listeners about our themed drink for this week's batch of episodes.
So our third episode in this week's set was The Variable, where where Daniel realizes he needs to stop worrying so much about constants and think about the variables of human free will and agency. See how that works out for him. But I decided to go with a drink where it is all constant ingredients, just a mule recipe. So simple syrup, ginger beer, and mint garnish. But the variable was a spirit of everyone's choosing. I believe, Dave, you had the Bermuda rum.
Yes.
Cara, you had a gin mule, and I had one with
tequila, wasn't it?
I think I had vodka. I think I went classic.
Maybe.
But yeah, so... just basic mule, but swap out the spirit, and we all get our own little version of the drink.
And it was delicious, so thank you for that, Robert. We appreciate it.
Agreed.
Recovery from the shame of Campari.
That's okay. I've already forgotten about that one.
Me too.
Yep. All right. Picking up with episode 512, Dead is Dead. Robert?
Well, we open with... actually, right after Ben was dropped off with the others, where Widmore returns to camp and finds out that Richard has chosen to heal him. And again, the actor, I think this is the first time we've seen Widmore at this age. We saw him as maybe a young, early 20s guy in the 1950s. Now he's well into his 30s. And the actor just does a very nice job, especially with mimicking Alan Dale's sort of vocal patterns. The way he says... "Hello, Benjamin," when he walks into the tent. I actually wondered if they dubbed him a little bit for that, because it's a spot-on impression. So kudos to the casting agency and to that actor.
And man, 1970s Widmore had great hair. It really feels like they've stepped up the hair game on the show this season between 1970s Widmore and 2007 glorious Locke Saeed.
Yeah, I feel like Penelope clearly got Widmore's like good hair genes because she's got that like luxurious like volume going on. Faraday just looks kind of like greasy and unkept all the time, so not so much luck there. Back in the present, Ben wakes up to see Locke standing over him. We get kind of the same beat that ended the previous episode, except we just see Ben's face entirely as he opens his eyes and processes that Locke is there in front of him. And it's still so satisfying just watching him clearly soiling himself, but trying so hard to try to recover and spin it into his usual thing.
Back in 2007, which feels weird to say, we check in on the other group of Ajira survivors, and I wrote down, hey, it's semi-recognizable character actor Brad William Henke, who you may remember from... he did a brief stint on Justified.
It was Coover, right?
Yeah, Coover on Justified. He was in the movie Choke with Sam Rockwell and Gillian Jacobs. He's one of those faces that pops up all over the place. Great actor.
Generally, just when you want a guy with very big energy, you go for him, and it can be various degrees of menacing or amiable, depending.
And then flashing back once again, this time to 1988, we see the stealing or kidnapping of little baby Alex. And we've seen them do this before already, the last time we had a Ben flashback episode. But having 50-year-old Michael Emerson play a 20-year-old version of himself certainly is a choice.
I didn't think it was bad. I've seen worse.
I've definitely seen worse.
I've got to think back in season 3, they were wrestling with this because they established that Ben was, I think, in his late 20s when the Dharma Initiative was wiped out and he directly killed his father. And they just, understandable, like, we need to have Michael in that scene. We don't want to have some other actor playing Ben. This is such a pivotal moment in his life. But now they've locked in that, okay, so from the moment the Dharma Initiative took over, the others took over and Ben was fully in with their group, then he's been Michael Emerson since then. So that does kind of mean that, yeah, in this bit, he's got to be there with teenage Ethan.
Teenage Ethan, I'll get to that in a second. But I think, Cara, the most egregious one I've ever seen is there's an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where they show Frank's flashbacks to the 1970s, and it's all they did was put a wig on Danny DeVito and nothing else.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
And I think they do the same thing with the guy playing his brother, right?
Yes, they do.
Who also just has that like very older, weathered look.
Oh, God.
But just slap a wig on him, you lose 20 years or more.
Is that all it takes?
So we see that Ben kidnapped Alex alongside little teenage Ethan. Is that he's how old was that kid supposed to
I
be?
feel like he's got to be at least, let's see, because I'm sure they've established what year the Dharma Initiative was wiped out. Because Ethan was born in 1977. So.
And this would be 1988. So he had to be like 11 here.
Okay.
That's weird. Because I also had the thought the other day, randomly getting out of the shower. I don't know why I think of these things, but I was like, wait a minute. Ethan, it's established, was born to two members of the Dharma Initiative. So did they just recruit him as a child to the others?
I'll actually say they never address it, but I think it is very possible that we established in this episode that for all of his amorality and ruthlessness, Ben does have kind of a soft spot for kids, that he, makes the decision to spare Russo because she's sleeping beside her baby. He takes Alex alive when he isn't supposed to. And in the present, we'll see how, he hesitates to kill Penny because her son Charlie comes next to her. So I can believe that he would have taken a step to, even as Horace was dying, to protect Horace's kid.
No, that's fair. That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. So after so many seasons of build up and talk about how the others took Alex when she was just a baby and how harrowing it was for Danielle, seeing it actually happen was a little underwhelming. Anyone else think that? It wasn't as harrowing as we've been led to believe.
Well, I mean, I think if you think about it, because really, whose perspective do we have? We had Rousseau's.
Yeah.
And so for her, it would have been.
Yeah.
I mean, she's got a gun pointed at her, and they took her baby, and she'd already been through all the whatever wacky, crazy, sick, whatever thing she had going on with the other people.
Yeah. This is the problem with the weird way they built up the others in the first two seasons, like these otherworldly forces on the other side of the island. Now that we know that they're human, it was literally just a kidnapping.
Yeah.
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 It's also weird because
Just
I'm pretty sure when Saeed asks Rousseau back in season 1, he's like, have you ever even seen these others? Because it's possible that Rousseau's just crazy and is invented. She says she hasn't, but she's heard them. And here she clearly gets a good look at Ben's face. Which also makes it weird when she catches Ben in the forest in season 2. She's not immediately to Saeed, this guy kidnapped my baby. I saw him.
It was dark.
Yeah.
This is where they start getting really weird with continuity. I'm going to talk about that more later because I had more weird after shower thoughts. I think about this show too much.
I think for all that I think this season does a nice job of kind of neatly weaving things together. Some of it does feel a little perfunctory. Oh yeah, we just got to check off that this happened and when. And here, yeah, Ben has to kidnap Alex because we know that Alex is raised among the others. And that's just got to happen. So we can't really have a whole episode of this. It just takes place over one scene. But yeah, I just don't buy that Ben would point a gun at Russo and she would just, sit there and beg him not to take her child. That she doesn't lunge at him, that she wouldn't rather get shot than let Alex get taken away from her. Yeah, I feel like there should have been something that stopped her from pursuing him apart from Ben saying, don't follow us.
Right.
Well, she did ask him, you're the ones who made us sick or whatever. So maybe she thinks he's infected with something. Maybe that's why.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Devil's advocate.
We do, back in the 2007 timeline, Ben and Locke have a conversation where, as Locke puts it, they're going to address the elephant in the room, which Ben recognizes as, the whole Ben murdered Locke thing. And he explains that he did it because he'd gotten the information that he needed from Locke, and then just kind of offhandedly says, well, I didn't have time to talk you back into killing yourself, which is such a cold-blooded line, but also sad because the point Locke was at, Ben totally could have if he'd taken a few hours. He could have absolutely gotten Locke back into doing that.
Well, Ben, always being one step of everyone else, keeps up his streak by somehow managing to get that shotgun away from Caesar. The new leader of the Ajira beach camp survivors, set up to be a serious force on the island and a great new character in addition to the, oh shit, he just got shot.
I was looking on TV tropes to see if Caesar even had a character entry on the page for Lost, and no, he's not. He didn't even have that much of an impact.
Wow.
Nope, he mouths off to Ben and gets shot, and like I do with all the other characters I wrote, bye Caesar.
It's sort of like how in a video game where, if you have like a level progression in a game where you build up like new powers and abilities, and every now and then they'll be like, okay, and now you can go back to like these level 1 foes that used to give you so much trouble, and now you can just crush them. That's basically what Caesar is to Ben, that Ben is just so advanced in his lies and manipulation, but he's had to work so much harder because all of our 815 characters know who he is now. But with Caesar, it's just like this guy who has no reason not to trust him, who clearly knows that something is up on the island, but has no big picture clue of what's going on. Yeah, Ben just manipulates him, gets him on his side, steals his weapon, and then murders him all in the space of about 10 minutes.
And I wrote it down in the notes, but it was actually Robert's observation. After shooting Caesar, Ben looks at Locke and like pretty much says that you're welcome. Like this is his apology for killing Locke. And Robert pointed out only Ben could apologize for murder with more murder.
And a little unnerving how Locke does not seem remotely bothered by this. That, he's clearly got his sense of mission, and Caesar was threatening him. But he doesn't seem remotely fazed by Ben just killing this guy when he could have threatened him, could have done anything else. But yeah, Locke is in a different place. And, this whole season we've seen Ben, like I said, having to deal with the fact that most of the people he needs to manipulate have known him long enough to be suspicious of him. Whether that means just being skeptical but going along with it, like Jack, or someone like Hurley, who literally runs in the opposite direction screaming when Ben tries to get him to do something. But with Locke, we have something else. We have Locke who just is no-selling all of Ben's manipulation attempts. He doesn't seem particularly bothered. He just kind of smiles, nods, and is like, all right, yeah, let's see where that goes. And it's just really fun to get to see Terry O'Quinn playing that. Just that this is a Locke who Ben cannot get his hooks back into, which very rewarding. Okay, what was this in reference to? Oh, yeah, when Ben brings Alex back to the camp, and Widmore tells him, you were supposed to kill the baby, or kill it, he says, and Ben is the one who insists on saying, it's a baby, it's a girl. Ben says, well, you do it, and holds the baby out to Widmore, and Widmore declines to do it then, but of course one day, indirectly, someone working for him will do that.
Womp.
Aww.
Yeah, so in 2007, Locke and Ben take one of the remaining outriggers to go over to the main island because Ben says that he has to be judged by the monster, and then doesn't really elaborate on what that means. But so they find their way to New Otherton, to Otherville, whatever we want to call it, where we last saw Lapidus and Sun. And I had to again point out that Frank Lapidus is the only sane man in this whole scenario, because as they're trying to convince Sun to go along with this insane plan, Lapidus kind of tells her, hey, we can just go back to the other island and get on the plane, which is still fully intact.
Or at least I can fix the radio.
Yeah. And no, Sun wants to stick around for whatever insanity is about to ensue, because she thinks there might be a chance you can still see Jin.
And Lapidus is like, just because there are 2 layers of dead people telling us to do this does not make it more of a good idea.
Yeah, so Lapidus fucks off back to the other island, which isn't really going to work out great for him in the short term. But yeah, he gets away from Ben and Locke for the time being. And then the trio goes to, they're in Ben's home. So Ben goes down to summon the monster the way he did in season 4. And we actually get to see him summoning it this time, which is going into a secret room. In his secret room, he has 2 levels of secret rooms, climbing into a pit and then pulling some kind of plunger in a pit of water, basically flushing the island like a toilet. It's one of the weirdest things on a show full of already weird things.
I do love it that it's not like some complicated lever or, like a flare goes off in the sky. I like that it's something that's clearly an action that could have reactions throughout the island, but not what you'd expect. It's a nice, weird touch, and one that calls forward to an image that we're going to have in the series finale, albeit in a much more dramatic fashion then. Cara, do you have any memory on that one?
No.
You did see season 6, right?
I did. Okay. I did. Yes, I did.
Yeah, we continue in the flashbacks to tell stories through Ben's hair, because he had kind of combed forward bangs when he kidnapped Alex, and now when Alex is a little girl that he's pushing on the swing set, he's actually got his neatly combed suburban dad hair as they're living in New Otherton. So telling us that he's reached that point, and that's also, I think, when we finally get to see him kicking Widmore off the island. Because people had actually pointed out that, wait, by Penny's age, she would have had to be conceived during the period where Widmore was the leader of the others. And we revealed, Widmore was leaving the island, met a woman, had a daughter, and that's how Ben was able to crowbar him out of the leadership of the others.
Yeah, I'll get to that weirdness in a second, because I started having revelations as we got further into this episode. We do get a nice title drop, because during their conversation between Ben and Son, while they're waiting on the smoke monster to appear, Ben tells Son, "Dead is dead." I wish I could remember now what that was in reference to.
So Son actually has a pretty reasonable reaction when she sees Locke walking around, which is just, oh, he must have faked his death. Because she didn't see him. I mean, I don't think she ever saw him in the coffin. She knows Jack did, but she's just like, oh, he must have faked it somehow, which, again, logical enough. Ben knows for a fact that Locke was dead, but can't really share that. And despite his claims, he tries to tell Locke, I knew this would happen when we brought you back, which Locke very clearly sees through in a moment. And Ben concedes to Son, he really thought Locke was dead. And that even on the island, he says, you don't come back from that even here. With all the miraculous stuff the island's done, you don't see dead people come back to life. Which is interesting, because we've seen, Christian Shepherd, and we're going to see a few more dead people before the end of the episode. So, is Ben right about that? Well, we will find out.
Yeah, and thanks to the off-island shenanigans back in Los Angeles, I finally realized that Penny and Daniel are half-siblings.
Yeah.
I don't know why that didn't occur to me earlier than this, but Widmore is the father of both. Yep. And then you, Robert?
Yeah, so we do see that Ben went to the marina after leaving Jack in the church. And I don't know if we'd seen it before, but the boat that Penny and Desmond have been sailing around in is called Our Mutual Friend, which is the title of a Charles Dickens novel. A nice touch to the fact that, Desmond was a huge fan of Dickens, that Penny wrote a love letter that she hid inside the book that he would read one day.
So in Ben's conversation on the phone with Widmore tells him that he's been trying to get back to the island for 20 years, which makes no sense because it's been 10 or 11 at most. Because we know that Alex was born in 1988, and in the flashback to Widmore being exiled, we see immediately to Ben going to show him off the island, Ben is pushing little Alex on a swing set. She had to have been, I'm really bad with the ages of children.
Like,
but
let's say five or
4?
six, maybe.
Yeah.
5 or 6. So this would be about 1993, 1994. So yeah, Widmore has been trying to get back to the island for more like 10 years. This is why I'm saying that the continuity around this time in the show gets really weird. They're really playing fast and loose with it.
Maybe he's just bad at math like me. Or, kind of like how I think the 1980s was 20 years ago. Because it was.
He doesn't need to do math. He's got fancy pants Oxford sons for that.
Exactly.
There you go.
And Cara, the 80s was 20 years ago.
Thank
I
you.
refuse to believe otherwise.
Agreed.
It's also weird to me that he says he's been trying to get back to the island for 20 years, not just because of the time discrepancy, but you have, as we found out, a whole station located in Los Angeles dedicated to determining the location of the island, and you knew well enough how to send a boat there.
Let's see. I'm trying to think let's see if there's a way I can sort of headcanon that one. Because he found out at some point where the lamppost station was, because he sends Desmond to find Eloise there. We could argue he didn't know where it was for a long time, and that it was only after the that he only recently learned the location of the land. Oh, that'd be a hard reach, though, because once the others took over the Dharma Initiative. Of course, did Ben know? I don't know. Yeah, that's fuzzy.
Yeah. Like, again, fast and loose with the rules here. But we finally get to find out why Ben was beat all to shit when he got on the plane and when we saw him making that soggy phone call to Jack. So,
what a glorious beating it was.
Yes. So before boarding the plane, Ben intends on following through with his threat to kill Penny. So that's why he goes to the dock. He marches up to he's marching up to the boat with a gun in his hand when he passes Desmond, who sees him and turns around and says something, so Ben shoots him. And Robert, you made a really good point here that I thought was interesting.
So it's a fun thing that doesn't happen nowadays in the era of streaming, where standards are pretty much whatever a given show wants them to be. But in the days of like broadcast TV, you had, network standards and practices that were very strict on like, how much blood you can show when somebody gets wounded, or, and so I think one thing is like, you can show someone bleeding after they get shot, but to have like actual blood flying when someone receives the wound is just across a broader line for whatever reason. So something that a lot of shows would do is come up with kind of crafty ways to visually represent blood flying without actually showing, like having to set off a squib on the actor. And in this case, Desmond is holding a bag of groceries over his chest when he recognizes Ben. And when Ben shoots him, the bullet goes through a container of, I think it's milk, sticking out of the bag. So we see a stream of white liquid go flying out when Desmond's hit. And it just triggers our brains to think blood spatter, even though that's not what it is. So it's just a nice way of working around network censorship to still create a cool image.
And in what is kind of one of the darker moments of the show, after shooting Desmond, Ben marches down to the end of the dock and pulls a gun or points the gun at Penny. And because he's Ben, has to give her a little monologue about why he's doing what he's doing. And as Robert earlier pointed out, he is stopped because of the appearance of little baby Charlie. And this pause gives Desmond long enough to recover, tackle him, and beat the shit out of him one-handed.
Yeah, and it's just a fantastic hero moment for Desmond. And this whole episode is kind of about Ben getting his comeuppance, both like physically and also, we didn't really make a lot of notes at it. I think we just watched like the last 10 minutes of the episode, but he does in fact go to the home lair, whatever you want to call it,
smoke hole.
Of the smoke hole, and is surrounded by the smoke and relives all of his moments with Alex up to her getting shot. And then Alex appears to him and Ben says, I'm so sorry, it was my fault. And in a great, instead of Alex being like graceful or forgiving, she's like, yeah, I know, you idiot. And I know you're planning to kill John again already. If you do that, I will destroy you. And actually like slams Ben up against a pillar as she's threatening him. And it's such a great moment of having, again, Ben just be like, all of his plans have fallen apart. Like he has nothing to manipulate, no one. And so when eventually Locke does come back to him to ask like, what happened, Ben's clearly just kind of like, I'm going to do whatever she said for the next little while.
Yeah, and hindsight being 2020, I made some notes that we're going to revisit in our season wrap-up episode because holy shit, the title of this episode should have just been foreshadowing in all capital letters. But we're going to move on to episode 513 with the punniest title of them all, Some Like It Hoth, referring to the ice planet from Empire Strikes Back.
This is the writers have said very consciously that this was like the lighter episode before they get into the really heavy stuff for the final 4 of the season. We go back to, I think Sawyer and Kate are returning from having delivered Ben to the others. And Sawyer, because unlike Kate, he knows how to get away with crime, is immediately like trying to contact Miles to see if he can delete the footage to cover their tracks of this extracurricular that they've done. Miles is called away before he's able to do that, but it's still good foresight on Sawyer's part.
Yeah, and we've seen Miles's talking to the dead before, both on and off island, but it was the beginning of this episode that really made me realize he has the most depressing superpower of anybody on this show, if you can even really want to call it that. And we'll find out later it's because as a child he was exposed to the electromagnetism of the what a weird sentence to say. Like the electromagnetic properties of the island, and I guess that's why he can speak to the dead. It doesn't really explain why Hurley can do it.
Well, because Hurley's mental.
Yeah, I mean, there's that.
I think it's possible that it's not even necessarily the incident as much as it's just the island can kind of give you this little extra bonus in the same way that like Locke can walk, and that sometimes it can heal something or it can give you something that wasn't there before.
And Hurley was exposed to the electromagnetism whenever the hatch blew up.
That's true.
True.
I mean, technically they all were, but maybe Hurley just had this predisposition and that awakened it.
Yeah. And that would explain something about the end of the show, too. Anyway.
Cara, you've played Return to the Obra Dinn, right?
Yes.
It's a video game where you're like, you're an insurance investigator of all things in the 1800s. A cargo ship that vanished at sea turns up in port with nobody on board, and you have to figure out what happened to it. And your power within the game is to basically see the last few seconds of a person's life when you're on the spot where they died.
Last remembrance.
Pretty much. And so you have like just a series of like fragments and snapshots to put together like, okay, what happened to this ship? How did each person die? And, it's crazy how Miles was apparently able to pick out like details and knowledge and personality where it seems like half the time all he'd be hearing is just,
Yeah. That would be my luck. That is all I would hear. But we do see him. So the beginning of the episode, we see Miles as a child, and then we see him later as a teenager going to visit his ill mother. And when we see teenage Miles, still played by the same actor, I love that teenage Miles fully embraced the 90s with the spiky hair and the clothes and the bracelets and jewelry. They gave him the snake bite lip piercings. It's great.
His hair is basically like Rufio from the movie Hook, which I will always remember. I will say Ken Leung is a little more convincing as a teenager than Michael Emerson.
Yeah.
Yeah, back in the present, Kate makes it back to the infirmary that they kidnapped Ben from. I don't know if it's called kidnapping if you're technically saving their life, but and Juliet's still there, and apparently neither of them decides to come up with a cover story because Roger Linus walks in 30 seconds later, and when he asks, "Hey, where is my son?" Kate's cover story is basically, and yeah, Roger is immediately running off to raise the alarm. This is another episode that is just not a good one for Kate because she either just fails to help in situations where, help would be clearly foreseeable, or she actively makes things worse, which we'll get to.
I should ask, is there a good episode for Kate? Like, is there...
I think she's had some episodes where, like, Evangeline Lilly gets to, like, stretch her muscles a little bit. And, basically when they have, like, a useful thing for Kate to contribute and she's not just a load that is tagging along with them. And when she's got an emotional register that isn't just, which guy am I horny for today?
Yeah.
As David, as you said eternally, when she is not sad and therefore horny. But, yeah, this is not one of the good ones.
No, especially because it's important to remember that Kate's backstory, like the cornerstone of her character, is that for the most of her adult life, she was a career criminal.
And fugitive.
Successful fugitive.
Yeah. This leans heavily into tell, don't show.
Now, on the other hand of that, with characters who we always love to see and who are very good in this episode, you have Hurley, who, when Miles basically gets sent out to pick up a body from where Radzinski is working on something and is told to deliver it to Dr. Chang, Hurley has a delivery to make out to Chang's worksite as well, because he's just become so committed to being like one of the kitchen guys for the Dharma Initiative, even making his special garlic mayo for the sandwiches, and just insists that, like, oh yeah, he can ride out there with Miles and prevent global warming, which hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, and it makes sense because this is the most low-stress position that Hurley has ever been in his entire life, essentially. He just gets to feed people, and no one knows he's a millionaire or anything like that, that he was in a psych ward. He just gets to provide for people. And so back in Miles's flashbacks, it's important to note that we're sort of kind of back into doing character-centric flashbacks with this batch of episodes. Like the last one was Ben, this one is Miles. And so we see adult Miles working with one of his, I guess you could call him a client.
Yeah.
Played by Guest star Dean Norris. Probably most famous, I'd say, for Breaking Bad.
Yeah, definitely at this point. And I think that show was in the middle of airing its first season at this point, so he just had not, like, he was sort of breaking through right then.
Breaking through on Breaking Bad.
So Miles, we saw this in his very first flashback when he met the freighter crew, is that he would get hired by people who wanted to have some contact with deceased loved ones. In this case, it turns out that the guy cremated his son, and so what Miles wants to do is harder without a body, and it becomes pretty clear that he's just going to make up an answer to give this guy what he wants to hear. And interestingly, he tells the guy to like hold out his hands, palms up, and Miles holds them and does a little bit of a ooh thing with his face, which is the same technique that the fake psychic used during Claire's flashback in season 1, of just pretending to use that for contact and to see something. And I don't know, I love the idea that there's like a handbook that all fake psychics use in the Lost universe. My next note is just all caps, "Oh, for God's sake, Kate." Because she sees Roger Linus sitting on the swing set just drinking beer, sad because his son, who was dying of a gunshot wound, has been abducted. And, however crummy of a father Roger is, that's a bad situation to be in. And Kate goes to sit next to him and decides to offer the... She doesn't actually say the words, "I'm from the future, so I know your son is going to survive," but her just constantly ham-handed, "I've got a feeling it's going to be all right. Just trust me, it's all going to be okay," leads Roger to reasonably respond, "Why are you talking like this? What do you know? What's going on?" And just so she tries to just comfort this guy who's, again, a crummy dude, but dealing with a bad time. And just all she does is just make him extremely suspicious of her and her whole deal.
And I know we've beat this dead horse a lot, but I wrote down in the notes, Kate, professional criminal, is still a terrible liar.
Yeah. So Miles and Hurley make it out to the work site, and Chang is annoyed that Hurley came along because, dead body's supposed to be all hush-hush. And so to threaten Hurley into silence, he does the whole, like, "I'll bust you down so hard." And he starts it off with, "If you think working in the kitchen is bad," and Hurley just goes, "I like the kitchen." And Chang actually pauses for a second and before he can recover to be like, "Yeah, well, you're not going to like scooping out the polar bear cages." But just, Hurley being happy where he is just so disarming to everybody around him.
Working in the kitchen is so low stakes. It's great. So for more of Miles' flashbacks, we see him getting abducted by Naomi, who we haven't seen for a while, since the beginning of season 4.
Appropriately for Miles, he is having a conversation with a dead person.
Oh, wow. Good point. And he gets thrown into a van that also includes Brad William Henke's character. Whoa. What was he doing off the island and now on the island?
I think those are separate. I think Naomi just has one conversation, and then after they talk, that's when he gets abducted. Because Naomi and...
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, Naomi and Brahm aren't working for the same people, we find out.
Yes, that is correct. But anyway, he pops up. And anyway, Miles... the offer that was made to him by Widmore to go to the island was for $1.6 million. And back in season 4, whenever he was talking to Ben, it was a very specifically, like weirdly specific, that he was asking Ben for $3.2 million. So now we know why.
He wanted exactly double to turn on his previous employer.
Yep. And back on the island in the 70s, we see Jack attempting to clean up a classroom in his workman outfit, and seeing Dr. Jack Shepard working as a janitor will never not be hilarious. Unfortunately, they don't get a whole lot of mileage out of this because the whole cover story thing is kind of dropped after this episode. But I feel like we could have used a whole season of just seeing Jack doing menial labor around the island. And maybe he would have been happy doing that like Hurley. Who knows? This is a very low-stakes job for him after a lifetime of a very high-stakes career.
I was looking at the blackboard, and I knew I couldn't erase all the chalk in time. So I told myself I'd let the fear in, but only for 5 seconds. I just asked how your day was, Jack.
It's been a while since we've gotten a good what kind of moment, but we see the construction underway of what will eventually be the Swan Station, and Hurley points out to Miles, they're building our hatch. What?
And Hurley specifically sees them imprint the numbers on the hatch, which they gave us kind of a wah moment when Hurley remarks to Miles that he thinks Chang is kind of a douche, and Miles replies, well, that douche is my dad. But I think most of us had kind of guessed that by this point.
Yeah. They do have fun with this, though, when we see the numbers being imprinted on the hatch, because one guy is reading out the numbers to another one and says 4, 8, 15, 16, 23. And he's like, oh, wait a minute, I can't read the last one. Oh, no, it's 42. We didn't bring it up in the last episode, but Lapidus does eventually make it back to the other island where he is confronted by Ilana. Is that the new what did you call her, Cara?
The new Ana Lucia?
The new Ana Lucia,
yeah.
Though I maintain that I think Caesar's the new Ana Lucia because he's like a take-charge guy with no actual competence for his situation who ends up getting shot because he didn't take care of his gun closely enough.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
But when he got approached, when he approaches Ilana and Bram, when he gets back to the island, they point guns at him and ask him, what lies in the shadow of the statue? Huh? And that comes up again in this episode.
They're also loading something into a large box that we don't get to see.
Mm-hmm. Mysterious. It's a literal mystery box, a J.J. Abrams' favorite. And then I think it's Bram in this episode that asked Miles the same thing, isn't it? Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, when they've got him in the van.
Yeah, they ask him, what lies in the shadow of the statue? So it's the second time that cat code phrase has come up. I wonder what it could mean.
We didn't really make a specific note on this, but a lot of the episode's heart is built around Miles and Hurley just going around in the van. Miles being kind of gruff and pissy at Hurley, and Hurley just disarming it with his, just Hurley lovability. And it's a very fun dynamic. And then when they're driving with Chang in the car as well, and Hurley is just awkwardly but delightfully trying to just get Chang and Miles to actually bond, just to be like, oh, this guy's name is Miles, just like your son. How about that? And but at heart, Hurley recognized that the most important thing you can ever do on this show is just break the vicious cycle of daddy issues. If you can just get those two to bond again, then all will be right in the world.
Hurley continues just to be the best and most adorable character because we find out where the title of the episode comes from. He's got a notebook that he is scribbling in the entire time, and when Miles takes it from him and starts reading, it's the opening scene from Empire Strikes Back. And Hurley wants to take advantage of their time travel shenanigans because he points out that at this point in time, the first Star Wars, which I don't think had even been subtitled A New Hope yet.
Yeah, I think it was just Star Wars
at that point. Just Star Wars, yeah, had just come out, and George Lucas would be looking to make a sequel. So he's going to try to write The Empire Strikes Back first and sell it. And I love Star Wars. I love Hurley.
Yeah. And that he's like, that he analogizes the situation Miles is in by saying, if Luke had just talked to Vader after finding out that he was his dad, they could have just avoided all the rest of the trouble. We also get a classic trope, which is when a character discovers, damning evidence and then goes to confront the guilty person without having told anyone else. And then they specifically tell the guilty person that they haven't told anyone else. Except for once, this works in the hero's favor because it's Phil, the eyebrows man, having discovered the security tape of Sawyer, and he goes to tell Sawyer, and when Sawyer's like, hey, what does Horace think? Or no, he says, have you told Horace? And as soon as Phil says he hasn't, Sawyer just knocks him unconscious. It's just, great to see Sawyer just immediately, know the right question to ask to be like, okay, well, I'm going to, and he tells Juliet, go get some rope, and she immediately starts walking towards their bedroom, which is
we had a lot of fun with that one. You want the really thick ropes or the thinner ones that, never mind, just bring them all.
Bring out the ball gag case. Not the first one, the second one. That one's got the harder straps.
God. So in flashbacks, we see that Miles, feeling guilty, went back to Dean Norris's character to tell him, essentially, that he lied about being able to contact his dead son. And he tells him, if you wanted your son to know you loved him, you should have told him when he was alive. Therefore, summing up 5 seasons of daddy issues into one sentence. It's a great moment for him and a really sad moment overall.
But sort of made up ties into what we get on the island when Miles watches, he looks into the house that, baby him is being is being raised in, and sees, Dr. Chang holding his son on his lap, reading to him. And after, a lifetime where his mom said, your dad sent us away and never cared about us, he gets to see, this guy excited to just spend time with his son. And he's, a rare moment of just vulnerability on that Ken Lung gets to play. And when Chang gets an urgent call and comes running out, sees, Miles, the security guy, he goes, Miles, I need you. And Ken Lung goes, you do? And it's really, it's both really touching, but also kind of hilarious how he just puppy eyes in that response.
Yeah. Well, the end of the episode, we see what the urgent call was about. The submarine has just returned with the researchers from Ann Arbor. I don't know what Ann Arbor is. And the last person to get off the submarine, I'm going to start learning the English language all over again. What's a submarine? The last person getting off the submarine is Daniel Faraday, thus setting us up for episode 514, The Variable, which we're going to discuss next. The episode that we had to pause in the middle of so that we could suss out the rules of time travel for everyone in the room. Here we go.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Strap in, fuckers. So yeah, apparently Dharma headquarters is located in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which, is there some significance to Ann Arbor that I don't know about historically, scientifically, just dramatically?
Not that I'm aware.
Okay. So they just threw a dart at a dartboard with a map on it.
Yeah, or it's very innocuous sounding.
Yeah. So Faraday gets brought back to the camp and joins up with so Sawyer's called everybody over to his house because he's like, all right, so I've got this guy tied up in my closet, but he's going to blow the whistle on us. We got to figure out what to do. No, sorry, that's later. Faraday sees Jack and basically just immediately tells him everything my mother said about you needing to come back here was wrong. And it's funny because Jack has been sort of speed running the John Locke journey of deciding that no, he's broken off the island. The island is his destiny. And when he goes there, he'll find something that makes him healed and whole again. And now he's reached the point where someone tells him, actually, all of that was garbage. And we're going to see how Jack handles that for the rest of the season.
Spoiler alert, not well.
Yeah, in flashbacks, we see Daniel, this is his flashback episode. We see him as a kid playing piano and his mom telling him to, put that nonsense aside. And the show never addresses how we find out by the end of this episode, his parents are Charles Widmore and Eloise Hawking, two extremely British people, and he just has a non-regional American accent. And they never try to explain it. There's not even a tossed off line to be like, I know sending you to that school in Kansas or whatever would no, it's just like he's just American. Don't worry about it.
So Faraday catches a ride back to the Swan Station where he lets himself in and takes the elevator down. After explaining the whole time as a circle theory, we get it visually represented because when he goes down into the Swan Station, we see him donning the helmet and clipboard that loops the season right back around to the very first scene in episode 1. That cold open after we see Pierre Chang getting called to the station and going down there and telling the workers not to drill any further. And then the big reveal, oh my God, it's Daniel Faraday in the 70s. We've come back to where we started. One great big time loop.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, except now that he is flipped because as we find out, he has changed his mind and decided that maybe it is possible to change the future.
Yeah, because we see what happens after that, which is him chasing Dr. Chang back to the elevator. And as they ride back up, just starts kind of throwing all the cards down on the table. I'm from the future. I know what's going to happen. And specifically, he says there's going to be an electromagnetic event in 6 hours. And the season finale is called The Incident. So hearing that line, I'm like, wow, we have 4 episodes left, and it's all going to take place within that 6-hour span for the people in the 1977 timeline. It's interesting when the show puts that kind of clock down for itself.
Oh, I love shit like that, especially because later in the episode, there's actually 3 episodes left, right?
Yeah, this one,
15,
one
16,
more, and
17.
then the 2-part finale.
What?
The one where there's the variable, there's one more, and then there's a 2-part finale.
Oh, I thought there's 17 episodes total this season. But I guess the last episode counts as one long episode, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, that might be how they produce it.
Let me check that real quick because, yeah, that's going to change, how we record these. We are currently on 14 the variable, episode 15 follow the leader, 16 the incident, and 17 the incident part 2.
Okay.
So it's interesting that later when we check in with him, he says they've got about 4 hours left. So which would mean by the end of the episode, there's 3 hours left, which corresponds pretty damn close with how many episodes there are.
Meta.
Yeah, that's the whole reason I went down that rabbit hole of, wait, how many episodes are there after this one? We finally, after a dry streak for a couple of episodes, we get a Sawyer nickname watch check-in again. He calls, over the course of the episode, Miles both twitchy and...
You're at Miles. I think you meant Faraday for this one.
Yeah, sorry. He calls Faraday twitchy and H.G. Wells.
Nice literary reference because we know Sawyer, for all of his, kind of gruff exterior, is actually quite well read. We do see Faraday back in the place where he was when we saw him all the way back in his first freighter flashback, living apparently with like a full-time caretaker somewhere in the U.S., sobbing as he saw the footage of what was presumed to be the wreck of 815. And then Widmore comes to visit him, and it's very unnerving because this is Widmore being like friendly and endearing and actually even smiling at Faraday as he recruits him to go to the island, which he says will finally fix him. Very, very unsettling, just that he is no less menacing or gruff just with that Allendale presence, but he's clearly trying to be kind to this person.
Yeah, so... when she was going through the brain scramblies at the beginning of the season, poor Charlotte confesses to Daniel that as a child, she remembers a man coming up to her and saying that she should never come back to the island after she leaves it. And that is what inspired Daniel to try to change things by saying he would not tell her. He wasn't going to do that. He knows that it was him that did that. Because she says, I think it was you. Mm-hmm. And so he decides not to do that when the opportunity presents itself. We also find out her last words were, help me out here, Robert, I'm not allowed to have...
Mommy says I can't have chocolate before dinner.
Yes. So, as he is about to go out on his big mission, Faraday takes a break because he sees something off screen and walks over to little baby Charlotte. And I wrote down in the notes, even in the 70s, a scruffy-looking, crying grown man approaching a small child on a playground should have raised some red flags. I mean, I know this is the Dharma Initiative and they're a bunch of dirty fucking hippies, but still, no one around was like, hey, who's that fucking weirdo talking to that 7-year-old?
To be fair, everybody could just be like, oh, it's Faraday. Remember him? He was the guy who just like twitched and muttered around. Like if he wasn't talking to her, he'd be talking to that tree over there. So just, let him do what he does.
He's harmless.
And Charlotte's last words were important because, once again, time is a loop. The first thing that she says to Daniel when he kneels down in front of her is, Mommy says I'm not allowed to have chocolate before dinner, or whatever it is Robert said. Is that right?
I think...
It's some variation.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to have chocolate before dinner, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to have chocolate before dinner. So the last thing that she said to him before she died and the first thing she says to him when he approaches her were the same sentence. Time travel, motherfuckers.
Because we do find out eventually that, yeah, he has come around to a different idea from his, whatever happened rule that he insisted on to Sawyer. This idea that you can go forward or backwards on the street, but you can't just make a new street.
Yeah, and now he is attempting to make a new street, but here's where things get confusing because he's decided that you can change the future. And by trying to do so, he accidentally proves his own theory correct. Because if he had made the decision to follow through on his resolve not to say anything to Charlotte, her circumstances would have been a lot different. The whole reason she wanted to come back is because she remembered a man as a child on an island telling her not to come back. Yeah, so his theory was sort of correct.
Yeah, it's interesting that that's the one place where he decides to fit back into the path that he's decided he can change is, again, if he was going whole hog on this, I'm going to do things differently, I'm going to change the path, he would have stayed very far away from her. but he still chooses to say the thing that is his predestination, and yet still emphasizes, I still think I can change this. So, yeah, it's interesting that he's on the course, but insisting that he can get himself off of it.
Listeners, those pauses that you're hearing from us are all of us going in our heads, is the thing that I'm saying making any fucking sense whatsoever?
Yeah, Cara, you with us on this one at all?
Listen, we know that this breaks my brain. I mean,
We're giving you the brain scramblies.
Oh my God. Like this whole thing. I need to like sit down and write things down. Like I need to think through it because yep.
Well, actually, we've got Dogs' whiteboard over here from where he used to work out. We'll wipe all that off and we'll just draw a graph.
Okay. Yeah. Let's do that. Murder board.
The murder board, yes.
So,
Robert, I love this note.
Yeah, so Jack, Kate, and Faraday go to get some guns, which are kept, I guess, near the Dharma Initiative garage for whatever reason. There's actually a nice moment where Kate tries to hand Faraday a rifle, and he's like, do you have something for a beginner? And so she just gives him a handgun, which is, it's just, on TV where most characters just can immediately pick up and use firearms. It's nice to have someone actually be like, yeah, I don't know how to do anything with this. But they run into Crazy Man Radzinski, who's coming back. He sees that Daniel has a gun, and so he and his guys immediately get into a gunfight with Jack, Kate, and Faraday that ends with them shooting a fuel tank and blowing up the garage. So I'm just saying that Jack and Kate cannot stop literally burning down the life that Sawyer and Juliet have built for themselves. That it's just everything is getting worse and worse for them.
After 3 days, Jack, Kate, and Hurley have been back for 3 days.
Wow.
Yep, and everything has gone to hell. So we find out that unlike all of the other men on the show, Daniel's downfall is actually caused by his mommy issues, not his daddy issues.
Yep, just a whole long chain of Eloise Hawking telling him to put aside silly things like playing the piano or gross girls and just focus on his physics.
Low-key incestuous for most of the episode. It gets very uncomfortable to watch at times.
A little bit. We also, in the 2007 timeline, we see Penny get Desmond to a hospital. And again, a nice bit of realism. The fact that he had something in front of him when the bullet hit him does not mean the bullet couldn't go through that thing and still enter his body. So, yeah, Desmond is in the hospital, and Eloise comes to see her there and has a line where she says, for the first time in a long time, I don't know what's going to happen next, which is a line that we'll get a little clarity on by the end of the episode. Thankfully, Desmond recovers. They don't leave us in suspense on that. He and Penny have a tearful reunion. And Hawking goes outside and finds Widmore waiting for her, who I think presumably just got on a plane as soon as Ben hung up the phone, trying desperately to get there in time, and then came to that hospital because that's where she is. When Hawking asks if he's going to go in to see his daughter, and he says, well, my relationship with her was something I had to sacrifice. Eloise goes, don't you talk to me about sacrifice. I just sent Daniel back to the island knowing that, and Widmore cuts her off with, he was my son too. And again, I think a lot of people had guessed by this point that Faraday was Widmore's son, but the confirmation is such a ooh moment that you don't think about, wait, why is he saying past tense already? Like, why would he be saying that in 2007 when, and we're going to find out very shortly that both Widmore and Eloise know exactly what happens after Daniel goes back to, or after, no, from their perspective, he's just been on the island. There's no continuity with.
Yeah, they have no idea.
Okay, now I'm thinking, why didn't they have this conversation after Faraday got on the freighter? Huh. Because because he left on the freighter in 2004, went to the island, and while he never got off the island in the present day. He got off the island in the 70s, went to Ann Arbor, and came back. Ah, dang it, I think I just talked myself out of it. Yeah, that actually they should have had this conversation after he left in 2004, because from their 2007 perspective, there hasn't been any big dramatic thing that caused Daniel to go there. It could also just be the first time they've seen each other since all that happened. Yeah, I'll allow that. Thank you
again, the continuity is weird.
Yeah, thank you all for listening while I just worked through this in my own head back and forth.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of that going on. You got a few more.
Yeah, so Radzinski goes to Sawyer's house, planning just to talk to the chief of security about what's happened, including the just hilariously... I just love how, like, bitchy Radzinski is about this, that he's like just constantly angry and hostile to everybody and just seems like he's never not been in a bad mood. But he sums up what happens by holding up his bandaged bloody hand with, "I just got shot by a physicist," as if, you know, you're being shot at by a janitor and I think a mechanic. So
Yes.
like there was like, I got shot by like a trained military commando also seems like it would have been bad. But eventually they hear Phil knocking in the closet, and before Sawyer and Juliet can really turn the tables, they get captured. Jack, Kate, and Faraday make it out into the jungle, and Faraday basically explains that his plan is to stop the incident, release the electromagnetic energy that causes the hatch to be built, and that will eventually cause Flight 815 to crash on the island. That essentially his goal is to prevent the entire series from taking place by making sure that their plane never crashes in 2004. And when asked how he's going to do that, he gets kind of a weird, crazy smile on his face and goes, "I'm going to detonate a hydrogen bomb." Which has to just be what every physicist wants to say at some point in their life.
100%. I know if I was a physicist, I would long for the day when I got to say that. This, call me crazy, hydrogen bombs, nuclear weapons are basically just giant electromagnetic explosions.
That's a part of it.
So-
The EMP is part of it. You'll understand why I might know that when we get to the end of the episode.
Oh,
Or
okay.
the end of our episode.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Would a large enough EMP be enough to take out another EMP?
So no.
Okay.
I mean,
it would just cause more of it?
Yeah, because you know it takes out everything that's electrical completely, and so no.
The other
Okay.
possibility is that he's doing what Desmond will eventually do by turning the failsafe key in 2004, which is he's blowing the dam. So he's going to cause the release of all the electromagnetic energy in one huge event. So there won't need to be anybody pushing the button and no like short release that could do something like crash a plane.
Oh. Another one of those pauses. Wait, what? Anyway, no. So, novice gun user that he is, Faraday walks into the others' camp to find his mother, Eloise, because he thinks that she can help them with this. And he does so by pointing his gun at Richard and demanding to know where Eloise is. Doesn't believe Richard when he says that Eloise isn't there. He says the classic, "I'm going to count to 3." And he starts counting while Richard is trying to talk him down.
Unfortunately for him, there was someone behind him who was only counting to 2.
Yep. Boom. He is shot in the back and collapses. And we see that the shooter was none other than his mother, Eloise Hawking. She walks up. She's standing over him, has no idea who he is. And his last line is to look at her and say, I'm paraphrasing, "but you knew this whole time," so essentially.
Yeah.
Which, another weird thought I had about this episode, because it's been established that Widmore and presumably Eloise can just leave the island at will, the episode starts with Daniel playing the piano, and it's the same actress playing Eloise both times. It makes me wonder if, like, after she realizes who she just killed, if she didn't get on the sub and go back home to see her son, and therefore set him on this path.
I think she's pregnant at this point. I don't remember if the actress has like a visible prosthetic on. We might see more of that in the next episode. But yeah, I think Daniel has not been born yet.
Yeah. The implication being that she has to keep this stable time loop going. Even though she knows that she's going to be the one to kill him, she lets him be sent back by Widmore anyway. Really dark stuff, Mom.
And just the idea that an entire like lifetime of her being kind of emotionally distant and just pushing him to study his physics and do that is her just trying not to get too emotionally attached because his eventual fate is going to be too hard for her. But yeah, just so Faraday's whole thing in this episode is to come back and just decide he's going to change it. And he basically is just, like most physicists, his theory is sound, so he assumes that, like, how he actually applies it is just sort of an afterthought. So he tells Chang, I'm from the future. Miles is your son. He, is running around shooting people, and he's going to blow up a bomb. And then, his whole story just comes to an end with getting basically caught in the bear trap of a closed time loop. Like, you think you were changing things? Nuh-uh. Your changing things got you killed while you were still in utero.
Yep, so now the big question is, what kind of time travel are we dealing with exactly? Are we talking about rubber band time travel, it all snaps back? Or are we talking about butterfly effect time travel and not the 2003 Ashton Kutcher classic, The Butterfly Effect? So that wraps up our this batch of episodes, and now we've just got one more left before we get to the end of the season. So next week we'll be coming back to discuss. I don't know what's wrong with me, you guys.
Are
today.
you having a stroke?
I think I
smell
might
toast.
be. Yeah, I mean, I'm struggling with the English language this episode. It's almost like, Cockney rhyming slang, except it's not intentional and it doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever. It's just me saying completely wrong words. Anyway.
So we don't leave listeners in suspense. Cara, how do you know so much about EMPs?
Yeah, it's not what you think. So I had been introduced to a very intelligent, strong writer. I mean, she's just Annie Jacobson. And so I'm listening to a book called Nuclear War, and it is so excellent. It's highly, highly, highly researched. Like, she's it's crazy. Like, she got access to people that people don't get access to. She's phenomenal, and she actually reads the audiobook. So yes, that's and it's funny because there was a point that I just listened to this past week where they were talking. She was talking about so basically there's a nuclear weapon that was launched from a submarine, and it was coming at California, and so they were talking about could we just shoot it down. But they basically said that shooting a missile with a missile is like shooting a bullet with a bullet. And so it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
So cool.
So one of the, besides, the bomb portion of a nuclear bomb, one of the other big dangers, is fallout from the radiation. The third, probably most pressing danger is the electromagnetic pulse, which would take out electronics within a certain radius, depending on how large the nuke is.
Yep.
But most electronics these days come pre-shielded. So the whole electromagnetic fallout, everything, we're suddenly back in the dark ages, is not as much of a threat as it used to be. But do you guys know what kind of device protects electronics from electromagnetic blasts?
I do.
What's it called?
Faraday cage.
A Faraday cage. That's right. Just like our poor deceased Daniel Faraday.
Aww.
Did we talk about the significance of his name when he was introduced? I don't know that we did.
I don't think we did.
I think we did.
Well, there's no way to go back and find out, sadly.
No.
Well, I mean, we can now. We've done it with everybody else.
Travel?
Yeah, let's loop back around to Daniel's introduction in episode 4.2.
Okay, awesome. Let's do it.
There we go. Robert, did you want to talk about that?
Oh, no, that was just it. Faraday cage being a sci-fi. Well, it's an actual concept, but a lot of sci-fi writers have expanded the possibilities of it to if you built it around a space station or something.
Yep. Well, I mean, Cara, now we know what you've been listening to and absorbing and enjoying.
Yes.
Robert, let's jump over to you. Social media or something that you're currently enjoying?
I'm listening to the audiobook of A Princess of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs, the guy who created Tarzan, probably most famously, but also wrote the John Carter novels about a Civil War veteran who goes to Mars and has all kinds of fantastic adventures. It's very fun, kind of pulp sci-fi adventure. There's different species of Martians that he encounters with, or that he has encounters with. There's a beautiful princess. It's a fun time, and the guy who's reading it does a nice kind of Matthew McConaughey-esque drawl for the first-person narration. So yeah, it's a fun read or
Nice.
listen.
Excellent. If you want to follow me online, you can do that on Instagram at dbhensley. If you want to keep up with Long Walk Productions, you can visit us online at longwalk.us to see more of our original work or hear past episodes that are no longer streaming. You can follow the YouTube links in the show notes. Thank you very much for listening, and if you enjoy this show, please make sure to leave us a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening on.